Brave hands of the man who's been hailed as the world authority on how to be calm, the author of the phenomenon that was and still is the multi-million best-selling Little Book of Calm. We welcome Paul Wilson. Thank you. It's a great release to have you here.
Good evening.
Because we always get stressed about this time. Now, you've created, have you, a stress-free existence for yourself? I suspect not, because you're an advertising consultant, you're the director of a medical research foundation, and you've got 3 kids.
Yes, I'm working on this all the time, creating this stress-free existence for myself. But the reality is, there is no such thing as a stress-free existence, because everybody has to submit themselves sooner or later to the stresses of normal life.
Or else you just fall asleep.
Or you're not living normal life. And I believe the secret is just to find ways of handling the stresses and get a bit of fun out of them from time to time.
Now, everybody knows you, if they know you at all, from Little Book of Calm, but it's not the first book you've written, and it's not the first time that you've encountered a calm existence. You've devoted your life to calming down. The new book is published. It's called Calm for Life, and you say that much of what you teach comes from centuries of tradition, centuries of training, and other aspects as well come from modern scientific research. Because a lot of people think when you talk about meditation and being calm, you're going back to Buddhism, you're going way, way back in history.
I was initially, because I did a book on meditation 20 years ago, but I've been a great, I don't want to say thief of other people's techniques, but I borrow them. And I've borrowed a lot of the calming techniques from Buddhism and from other forms of meditative practices that date back thousands and thousands of years. However, in doing that, I always thought that you didn't have to accept all the philosophy or the spiritual beliefs that went with it. Not that I was saying they were wrong, it's just that you could have the technique without it. So in the last few years, or the last maybe 10 years, we've been researching what goes on in someone's mind when they're in deep states of meditation. What do they go through to get into those really relaxed, peaceful states? And it's quite easy. We can reproduce it.
Were you stressed to start with then?
Yes. That's where I originally got into this whole industry, if you can call it an industry, when I was about 25, and I was the creative director of a large advertising agency with a staff of maybe about 40 people. And a 25-year-old should never have that sort of job. But in those days, it was very clever to have someone who's 25. You'd say, look, we got the world's youngest creative director.
And you wanted it at 25 as well,
didn't you? Of course.
Yeah, sure.
And, but I didn't cope with it very well, and nor do most people in those sorts of positions. So I went looking for a positive way of dealing with the stresses that I was suffering, as opposed to the negative way which I was previously doing it, like drinking too much and being a nasty person.
Yeah. All right, let's get to it, because it's the big book of calm, really. It's calm for life. Understanding is everything, you say. And you say that being calm is a choice. It's easy to become calm, and once calm, you can achieve extraordinary things. So what exactly is it that we need to understand?
The first one is being calm is easy. It is a decision for most people, more so than it is a practice. The fact that you decide to be calm and tell yourself, I'm going to be calm, puts you well down the path towards achieving it, because it's not like exercise or diet or anything like that. We have to wait for the results. The results are immediate. You feel more relaxed the moment you make the decision. Secondly, the practices of becoming a very deeply calm person, they either go to those states occasionally for the restorative values that they have, are quite easy and straightforward. And the other part was, and this started about 10 years ago, and I saw a connection between the martial arts, when they did extraordinary feats of things, from a state of inner calm. You ever watched a martial artist really do a lot of damage? Mm. What they're doing it from is this incredibly centered, calm state. And that was very seductive concept for me, to think that if I could do something like that, then I could go on to do great feats in various areas. And then I found out that athletes use exactly the same practice when they're great athletes. Musicians and opera singers do the same thing. They go to this deeply centered, calm state before they did it. And we began to see this pattern emerging, so we started to research into successful people. People who were good racing drivers, people who were good surgeons, people who had been married for 55 years and still liked the person they were married to. And we went and looked at all these people and saw if there was any sort of connection between what they did. And that's what we found.
Because you talk about getting ill through stress, and you talk about calm for adjustment and remedy, because I believe in healthy mind, healthy body, and people do get ill when they're physically ill, when they're mentally stressed. How does this stress affect us physically?
Well, it does affect people in a variety of ways. And one of the things that I'm always very cautious about doing is describing the symptoms in great detail, because whenever you have someone describing symptoms like now, then you automatically begin to feel some of them. So I like to concentrate on the positives most of all.
Yeah, don't scare us.
But from the negative point of view, the stresses of normal life tend to be more cumulative, and they build up until you have this sense of unease and anxiety and restlessness, and then they begin to become more physical. And there's a whole range of symptoms that go with that, which I'm sure most people know about.
Mm.
And then there's another step beyond that, if you don't do anything about it, is when you lose total emotional control. You have no power over what goes on in your mind and your life in general. But the area for concentration for us is at the stage before that, before you lose control.
Because a lot of people say, yes, I feel wound up and I'm very stressed, and you get the sweaty palms and the grinding teeth and the perspiration and the bad temper and stuff. And then they have a stroke or a heart attack, and then that's the first warning that they've got to slow down, or else the next one's going to be terminal.
And it's a pretty radical sort of warning to have, isn't it? The way I like to look at it is being calm, and the practices of being calm can be pleasurable. Like if you go and have a massage, for example, which is a very quick, easy demonstration of how pleasurable it can be to be relaxed, then you can see a sort of connection between these things. Now, I see a similar sort of connection between meditation, between having a long hot bath, between sitting quietly for 20 minutes and doing nothing, between going for a long walk with no real purpose on mind, between those and massage. Sorry, I was getting a bit confused there.
Massage is great. Oh, I'd like one of those every night, right about now. But what's going on in the brain when you actually calm down? Because there's a chapter in the book called An Iron Will and a Steel Trap Mind, and you talk about the differences in each side of the brain, what different hemispheres are doing, what's being processed. What's actually going on in our head when we're calming down?
Well, what goes on in the brain at the best of times is lots of little electrical impulses which flit around, and they become thoughts and become actions that we do, and emotions even. And all of those things can be measured in a quite predictable way just by using EEG, which is electroencephalograph, or PET scans, or any of those forms of technologies. Now, what we were doing is looking at people who are deeply relaxed and seeing what changes took place in their brain during that. And then we found that you could actually manipulate those changes just by adopting certain postures, for example, or different frames of mind, or just little practices and techniques. And, for example, if you know that a really relaxed person has a high and elevated alpha and theta waves in their brain, then you can reproduce those high alpha and theta waves just by doing a number of different things.
Now, are these the thought stoppers? Well, you've got some ideas called thought stoppers, which start you sort of to shut down the really stressful parts, widening one's vision and beginning to sort of nod off.
The idea of stopping your thoughts, it sounds easy. Everyone thinks they can stop their thoughts, but nobody can, because the nature of thought is to continue moving. And when you have a moving thought, you have a restlessness in the brain. But if you could stop your thinking somehow, then you immediately begin to slip into a really relaxed state. Doesn't mean you stop being aware of things. It just means you're not thinking all the time. And that's what meditation is about. It fills the mind with something, whether it's an exercise like in Tai Chi or yoga, or whether it's a thought, or whether it's a sound, whether it's a mantra. You heard of that word? All of those things just fill the mind with one thing, so you stop thinking. But there are little physiological things you can do, like right now. And this is probably not the right time of night to do it.
It probably is.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm sure people are thinking, if we've had a really lousy day, or even if we just fancy a cuddle, really, what can we do now to sort of just calm us down? Something we can all do tonight.
Okay. Well, first of all, most people who are listening have already started to calm down, because the topic is one of those things that just by listening or talking about it, you immediately begin to relax. But there are things you can do with your body which immediately have an effect on the brain, and these are measurable effects, and what's more, once you do them, you can't stop the effect happening. It does help you to relax. And one of them is just a thing you can do with your eyes, for example. If you're looking at something right now, your eyes tend to focus on a point. So if you keep looking at that point and then just widen your peripheral vision so you can see more around the room of what you're looking at now. So as you're listening, your peripheral vision is just broadening, but you're not moving your eyes at all. Then without doing anything, your body begins to relax. Similarly, if you let your eyes drift upwards, just above the horizon, the same thing begins to happen. Or if you close your eyes altogether, the same thing begins to happen. Nothing you can do to prevent this. You will feel more and more relaxed. I shouldn't go on too long or we'll have everyone asleep.
Yes, don't nod off. We're talking about calm with Paul Wilson, and we'll talk more after a very calm James Taylor. Calm for life, if that is indeed possible, because you're an incredibly busy guy. You have more than your fair share of stress on a daily basis, I suspect. Does anybody see you livid, ranting, shouting, slamming things?
Probably not to that extreme, but I do suffer the stresses that everyone else does in business particularly. And, well, I don't say I suffer them, I'm subjected to them. And I have to work on handling them and addressing the way I look at them.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing thing.
Because stress is part of the adrenaline release.
Yeah, and it's also part of an exciting work practice, for example. You can be working in an exciting environment, which if you took it too seriously or you were too engrossed in it and couldn't see another side to it, could be quite damaging to you. But on the other hand, it could be quite exhilarating to be involved in it.
Because we talked about heart attack and stroke earlier on being a major warning that something's wrong. A lot of people know they're working hard. A lot of people know they're work hard, play hard, do all that thing, work more hours than anybody else. But when do they know they're becoming overstressed?
I don't think there's any special barometer you need, because you do know these things very early in the piece. You know that this is not how it's meant to be. And that's how, in certainly all the people I've spoken to, that's exactly what they played back. They knew they weren't getting any fun out of life.
Yeah.
And that's not how life's meant to be, you know, that you can have fun as well. And getting that balance takes a bit of effort. Takes a bit of hard work sometimes, but the most important of all, it takes a little bit of a shift in the way you look at things.
Because you were stressed out at 25.
Yeah.
Running a department with 40 people in it. When did you realise that things were getting a bit too much?
Well, actually, you mentioned stroke and heart attacks before. There was a guy in my office who was 32. He was an art director, and he had a stroke. And I always thought strokes were for old people until that happened. And it was a very scary thing because he didn't recover from it very well. And he and I used to do very similar things in the way we were leading our lives, you know, a very fast lifestyle. And I thought, that could easily be me, especially as I was a bit of a hypochondriac then.
Are you still on that?
No.
Yeah, you see, I think it's all related. Because the early focus of your research was on calming techniques, going way, way back, India, Taiwan, China, Tibet, Japan, Korea and stuff. Did the meditation studies come before the work on calmness? Because you obviously wanted to get this stress thing off your back.
I knew about meditation from before that, before I really needed it. I knew it as a practice, and I knew how it worked and how to perform it, and even how to teach it. But for me, it was a bit of a diversion, really, you know, a bit of fun, something to do. It had no therapeutic need. I had no therapeutic need for it, and nor did I see any benefit in it in that sense. But when I did have the need, and I thought, well, maybe meditation would work, I found out that it didn't really work because it was too hard to assimilate with the sort of life I was leading. So that's when I started this study to see if there was an easier way, and I was looking for an easier way, or a shorter way, or a more convenient way of adopting the practices, because I knew the benefits of it, adopting those and just assimilating them into a busy life. And that's really what I spent my maybe 5 or 6 years doing.
Because that's the trouble. Somebody said, you know, spend 10 minutes, lie down, stretch, you know, tense yourself up, do some muscle relaxing exercises, do some thought calming exercises. It takes 10 minutes a day. And I thought, after 5 minutes, I'll be lying there thinking, this is a waste of time.
Yeah. So I say it takes 20 minutes a day. And I think we should all give ourselves at least 20 or 30 minutes a day, not doing those exercises necessarily, but putting aside the time just to discover what it's like to be a human being without any form of stimulation going on in your life. And very few of us doing it. It's just something that's, you know, we used to do it and we remember doing it once, but we seldom do it. And whether that means you've got to run a hot bath and, you know, turn the lights out and just be by yourself for 20 minutes, or whether it means you sit in the garden and meditate or go for a long walk, it doesn't really matter as long as you keep your mind clear and you don't try to do anything during that time except just enjoy your own company.